Hello everyone, welcome to this new part of my tier list for Star Wars Unlimited, and today we're going to talk about Villainy Cunning. So, let's go right away with our first card, ASB Agent. ISB Agent. So ISB Agent is the one drop that can ping any unit when it comes into play. This effect, I would say in general in card games are quite good and quite flexible, but in the current meta this card is not very well positioned simply because there's very few units with 1 health that see extensive amount of play right now in the game. So if you really look at our tier list and see what kind of 1 health unit actually see play, you're gonna find Death Star Stormtrooper in B tier, and that's about it. There's going to be, of course, Greedo, which we'll talk about in the next video, which also sees play. But that's pretty much it. You're not typically seeing a lot of 1 HP unit in the game, which means that this card, basically on its own, doesn't do a whole lot. Always have to be combined with something else to really work out, and that makes the card relatively awkward to play. So ISB Agent is not as good as people initially thought it was. And I usually been cut out of most decks, except in one deck, which is the Boba Red deck. So Boba Red love ISB Agent simply because it can be combined with the base Thorrk Town, which, as you know, can deal 3 damage to a damaged unit. So you play ASB Agent, and then you play you use Thorrk Town, and then suddenly you can kill something that has up to 4 health, which is pretty good. So yeah, basically the fact that Thorrk Town exists make ISB agents far better than what we would usually say, and is very good in that very context. So to me, I'm gonna place ISB agents in the B tier category. It's probably gonna be on the lower end of B tier, but definitely worth playing over Moment of Peace. Probably play over Keep Fighting. Okay, I'm gonna put it behind Bending Two Tubes here. Seems like a good place for him. Very solid card in Boba Red, sorry. But playable card. But it's not in any other black yellow deck. But unfortunately, doesn't really is not very well positioned. Something I want to say as well is that the body is very useless. Like the 1-3 body really doesn't do much of anything, generally speaking, which is also a problem with this card. If you're playing it, it's really for the entering battlefield effect, at least as of now. Moving on, we got Bib Fortuna. So Bib Fortuna, when it was revealed a couple of weeks ago, I really thought this card was going to be really good, and unfortunately he hasn't lived up to my expectations. The ability is a lot more situational than I thought, and the 1-3 stat line, just like for ASB Agent, is really not good at all and doesn't really do anything. The fact that it's shielded doesn't really doesn't help the card so much, because once again, the stat lines, the opponent can most often than not just ignore it. So I think that Bib Fortuna is still a good card, but once again you really have to make use of his ability. If you're not making use of his ability on a consistent basis, then the body is very much useless. So typically I think this card is going to be good in a deck like Grand Admiral Thrawn, or that control decks that really play very expensive events. So if you're playing a deck that, for example, plays Super Laser Blast, or wants to play his event cheaper, then Bib Fortuna is very good because it's very hard to remove from the board, and he's going to provide you with bold presence, and he's going to allow you to play your event cheaper. So Bib Fortuna, and also I think this card is only going to get better as we're going to see more events being made, and probably maybe at some point see a deck that almost is entirely made of events, in which case of course this card is going to be really, really, really powerful. So I think this card has a lot of potential, but in the current stage of the game has not really lived up to my expectation. It is not an auto-include by any mean, and in a deck in which it goes, he is good, but he's not like anything amazing. So I'm going to put this in high C tier here, probably over the under the skirmisher, but over the Starwing Scout. He's been okay, but hasn't been amazing. For my Boba deck, for example, I went back to playing Crafty Smuggler because at least Crafty Smuggler is a 2/2, which is significantly better in any way possible. Next, we got a Cartel Spacer. Cartel Spacer is one of those space units which is an okay unit to play on turn 1, but can become really good when you use the when play ability. So there's a couple of conditions for this. You need to have another Cunning unit in play, and you can only exhaust a unit that costs 4 or less. So there's some limitations, but I think the card still remains a staple of yellow-black decks, and most yellow-black decks will include this card, simply because it's a turn 1 play that goes into space. And the ability is not bad at all when you can trigger it. So in my opinion, I put this exactly on the same kind of level as the Inferno 4 and Arc 170. Maybe out of those 4, it is probably the weakest of them. But I'm gonna place it. I'm gonna place it below Shore Trooper here, as just a solid card that just sees consistent amount of play. Nothing amazing, but you need some turn 1 play, and turn 1 plays in space is something that Cunning Villainy was missing, so it is our best option in that area. Moving on, we got the infamous Boba Disintegrator. So Boba is I think the first Cunning Villainy card that has been spoiled, and it was back then the best 3-drop in the game. And it still is now the best 3-drop in the game. There hasn't been any 3-drop that can even close to what this card can offer. It has simply absolutely amazing stats for its price, and the ability is far from irrelevant. It allows him to kill units that are far bigger than himself. Obviously, there's a couple of conditions. This unit needs to be exhausted and needs to have not interplayed this round. But even then, it's still an ability that will drastically change the way your opponent plays. It's also a card that combines very well with Energy Conversion Lab, because then you can suddenly attack with Boba out of nowhere and take your opponent by surprise. And it's already relatively difficult to play around Boba's ability when he's already in play, but when he's not even in play, it becomes even more difficult. So he's an excellent card. It can be pulled off out of Vader, the Vader unit, the Vader commander of the 7th Legion. He can he's just provide insane amount of bulk presence, very hard to get rid of. But honestly, really, like as I said, the mainstay of this unit is the stats. 3/5 for 3 is just incredible. The 5 HP is just incredible. So where do we rank Boba? For me, Boba is going into the S tier. It's going to be relatively hard to rank because hasn't been because we have to see it. So yeah, I think it's better than Vader because it impacts the game earlier, which usually is going to be more impactful. Also, is it once again very hard to compare it to Resupply and Super Laser Technician because those cards are so different. I'm going to place it over Resupply but under Super Laser Technician. It's just an incredible card. It's one of the best 3-drop in the game. It is S tier, and it is a big reason why Boba as a leader is so good as well. Next we got 7th Fleet Defender. Another very strong 3-drop. Basically 3/2 for 3 is a very good stat line for space because it allows you to kill the A-Wing without even dying. But the problem is, but the advantage as well is that you also get shielded, which means that you can effectively kill 2 space units with the 7th Fleet Defender without even losing your 7th Fleet Defender often. And sometimes, so it's a very annoying card to remove for a lot of decks. And if you don't kill it, it's going to put some pressure in space. It's going to attack for 3 per turn. So 7th Fleet Defender, not on the same power level as Boba, but still a very solid card, very annoying to deal with, very hard to remove, and a card that has been an absolute auto-include in all Villainy Cunning deck, and this is going to go in the A tier category. I'm going to place this under Echo-based Defender, but over Force Choke. It's been just a very solid card, and an auto-include in all Cunning Villainy decks, so yellow-black. Next we got Jabba the Hutt. So Jabba the Hutt provided a humongous body, 2/8, Unfortunately, 2-8 is not a great stat line. Yes, it's very hard to kill, but with only 2 attack, it doesn't really kill a whole lot, doesn't really put a lot of pressure on the base, especially for 4 drop. That so really, to make Jabba the Hutt useful, you really have to rely on his ability. And his ability has two main part. The first one is like it makes tricks cheaper, and he also allows you to, when played, you dig for a trick at 8 cards deep, and you can draw it. So what I don't like about Jabba is that he's a unit that takes a lot of space in your deck. No pun intended. So what happens is that you play Jabba, but then you also need to play about 8 to 9 tricks at the minimum in order to make his ability consistent. If you don't want to be whiffing with his ability, it is a good idea to put at least between 8 and 9 tricks. And the problem is that then, so there are some tricks which are just generally very powerful. Waylay, shoot first, and to some extent, to a lesser extent, Asteroid Sanctuary, but this takes a lot of space in your deck to put 8 tricks or 9 tricks on top of Jabba. There's been a few more tricks being revealed recently, but they are way more specialized. Like for example, I Had No Choice, which is very specialized. It's fine to play as a one-off in your deck, but I don't think you want to play any more than this. And there's also Sneak Attack, which really requires a very specific deck to play around. So all those things together mean that Jabba the Hutt has not really encountered the success that it maybe deserves. So you would think about Jabba as a in a sort of a control yellow-black deck where you kind of dig for a very powerful thing. You dig for a very powerful thing, and and then try to make it cheaper, playing I Had No Choice for 1 cheaper. I think if I Had No Choice was significantly better, Jabba would be much better. So currently, I think Jabba is not there yet in terms of his potential, but it's a card that has a lot of potential for the future as they reveal more tricks. Jabba is only going to get better and better. So to me, but obviously we are judging the card the way they are in Spark of Rebellion right now, and at the moment I would rate this card in the C tier category. Where do we place it in the C tier? I'm going to place it under Protector, but over Forced Surrender. I think it's a card that is quite specialized. Once again, huge potential for the future. If you play a combo deck that is based on Sneak Attack, you can search specifically for Sneak Attack. That's pretty amazing. As more tricks are getting revealed, he's gonna get stronger. So I believe Jabba has huge potential for the future, but as of now, he's just not as good as for now. So moving on, we got Bosk. Bosk, in my opinion, is the best 5-drop in the game. It's the best thing you can play on turn 4 out of every other card you can play in this game. Obviously, so it comes into play, immediate impact, kill something, excellent stats. For an ambush unit, it has amazing stats. 4-5 makes a huge difference because very often you're able to kill something and survive the attack. And if left alive, it's an absolute powerhouse. Every time you play an event, you can deal damage to any unit. Very flexible effect, absolutely free. All you have to do is play cheap events, which the Cunning Villainy aspect has plenty of. He simply is just very, very good. Even if there is nothing to ambush, it's completely okay to play a Bosk, and the fact that Bosk has not taken any damage means that he's going to be harder to kill, and therefore his passive ability is going to be even more powerful. So Bosk is simply just an absolute auto-include in all yellow-black deck, and it definitely deserves the S tier status. I think it's not as good as Boba, because once again, it just intervened a bit later in the game, but I think it's just that good. I'm going to place it over Battlefield Marine, but under K2SO. I still prefer K2SO in general. I mean, I like both of those units, to be honest, but K2SO just happens to be maybe a little bit more harder to deal with, but Bosk is just such an amazing card, in my opinion. And obviously, when you can play it on turn 3, it's really good as well. because if you ramp on turn 3, you can on turn 2 you can play Bosk on turn 3. What I also like about Bosk is all well is synergized with Boba Fett. So the way that works is that you have what we call the Boba turn, which is the turn 4 or turn 3 if you manage to get a ramp. And what happens is typically you will spend all of your resources to use a Bosk, kill something thanks to the ambush, use Boba's ability to ready a resource, then summon Boba as a unit, attack with Boba, and ready 2 more resources. So you've ready 3 resources so far, and then you can play events to basically use the ability of Bosk right away, or you can play one of the many powerful 3-drop that this color combination have access to, whether it's Boba Fett Disintegrator or 7th Fleet Defender. So it's an incredible card that just plays extremely well into what Boba is trying to do. Next we got Bounty Hunter Crew. Bounty Hunter Crew is an interesting card. Once again, immediate impact on the game. Not great stat for a 6-drop, but the when play ability is very powerful. Return an event from your discard pile to your honor hand. So you're gonna keep this. You're gonna return a card back into your hand when you play this. So immediate impact on the game. It can come into play, kill a unit, bring back something else. So a huge potential value from this card. A bit expensive and the stats are not great, so it's not a card that sees a lot of play, but it's a card that sometimes you're going to see in the sideboard for Villainy yellow deck, simply as a way to bring back your important events. Notably in double Cunning, the card is really good because it allows you to bring back your Cunnings, which are very powerful events. So it's not unplayable by any means. It's a little bit understats and a bit overpriced, but if you're looking for ways to make value in the later stage of the game, in the black-yellow deck, I think Bounty Hunter Crew is a force to be reckoned with. So I'm gonna place this. Oh, wrong card. Oops. I don't know where this was again. Sorry. So we're putting him over. To me, Bounty Hunter Crew has seen almost more play than Jabba the Hutt, but I'm still not gonna rate it over it, because if you're playing Jabba the Hutt, you're basing your deck around him, while Bounty Hunter Crew is a sideboard card, so I can't possibly rate him. I'm gonna rate him over Blaze Malbus, and yeah, I think that's a mid of C tier is a good place for him. Next we got Fett's Fire Spray. So Fett's Fire Spray is a card that, if you do not play Boba as a leader, is very bad. It's a 5/6 for 6 with an ability that is honestly extremely situational. On paper, this ability looks strong, but the matter is most of the units in the game are unique, making the ability very difficult to use. And very easy for the opponent to play around, because they're simply just going to attack with their non-unique unit first, and then they're only going to have non-unique unit left, and you won't be able to use that ability. And also, most often, you, as your first action, you prefer to attack with your Fett Fire Spray before it gets killed. So Fett Fire Spray, also known as the Slave One, is, however, absolutely amazing if you play Boba Fett as your leader, because then he will come into play ready. And in this case, this card turns from a pretty mediocre card that would maybe be C tier into the one of the strongest card in the game. So Fett Fire Spray is, in my opinion, one of the most ban-worthy card in the game. It's a very long conversation, so I'm not gonna get into it, and I'm not advocating for a ban at the moment. But I think that if someone was gonna tell me, hey, if you had to ban one card in this game, which one would it be? It would be Fett Fire Spray. So once again, I'm not saying that this card needs to be banned right now. I'm just saying that's the card I would ban if I just had to ban a card. This card is the reason why Boba Fett as a leader is a bit out of control in the meta, and in my opinion the best deck in the game. it puts a tremendous amount of pressure on the opponent, and it's not easy to answer because it has 6 HP. You can't kill this with stick down. You really need very specific tool to deal with this. Because it's a space unit, it's a lot harder to interact with. Most of the ambush unit cannot ambush it. Most sentinels unit won't be able to block it. It's an incredibly oppressive card. It comes into play, deals you 5 damage, and then the Bobo player takes initiative, slaps you again for 5. It's really hard to prevent Fire Spray from dealing you 5, 10 damage, and you're gonna have to deploy a significant amount of resources to deal with it. And it's also plays extremely well into the Boba plan where I was saying earlier, where on turn 3 or on turn 4 you're gonna have this amazing Boba turn that allows you to play multiple super powerful units in a row, and then your opponent is already exhausted and already taken a lot of damage from that huge turn. Then the turn after, he has to deal with Fire Spray, and this sequencing is just extremely nasty. And once again, Fire Spray often is going to come into play 1 turn earlier. So it's an absolutely amazing card in the context of a Boba deck. So technically, those kind of card, I would usually put those card in A tier, because even though it is a very powerful card, it's only specifically playable in Boba. But because Boba is the strongest deck in the game, and the strongest leader in the game, and Boba Fire Spray has such a massive impact on the deck that I think it deserved the S tier status, and it deserved this S tier status very much so, as once again one of the strongest cards in the deck in the context of a Boba deck. So I'm gonna place this card over Boba Fett, probably under Super Laser Technician. Once again, Super Laser Technician just has such a massive impact on the game, it's hard to overstate that. But yeah, Fett Fire Spray, definitely up there in the S tier category. An incredibly powerful card, and the reason why I would ban this card is because it's a good way to reduce the power of Boba without affecting negatively the other decks in the game. So I think it would be... but once again, it's still way too early to talk about bans, but I just wanted to have this being mentioned. Moving on, we got Chimera. So Chimera is basically supposed to be the end game for a dedicated Thrawn deck, as his ability synergizes fairly well with Thrawn, because Thrawn, you see what your opponent is going to draw. You play this card, you attack with it, you name the card that you've seen from Thrawn, and that opponent will have to discard that card. So the problem is that the Chimera is a 8 drop that doesn't have an immediate impact on the game. You have to attack with the Chimera to be able to use his ability. So Chimera is just extremely underwhelming for that reason. Yes, he's hard to kill, 7 HP and shielded, but there are cards that just completely ignore that. Actually, there are a lot of cards that completely ignore this, and the fact that the ability only works on attack, and it's not even that powerful of an ability as well. Discarding a card is okay, but it's not like nothing amazing. So Chimera is just a massive disappointment. I think one of the big reasons why Thrawn is not a really playable leader, is not a very competitive leader, is because Chimera has been so underwhelming. So to me, Chimera is gonna go into the D tier. He's not a playable unit. I think there's just much better things to do in this game. For 8 resources, there's just and yeah, no immediate impact on the game is a deal breaker for this card, and the effect is not even that powerful. So it's gonna go into the D tier category, and I think I'm gonna place it under Cloud City Guard. Yeah, disappointing for a card like this. Next, we got a card called No Good to Me Dead. No Good to Be Dead is the best exhaust effect in the game because it exhausts a unit for essentially 2 turns, which is incredible. It's relatively cheap and allows you to deal with a unit for a long period of time. Very good against very large units or very expensive leaders. It's a card that effectively almost single-handedly killed Han as a deck, which is very thematically fitting, but basically Han Solo as a leader hate this card, and if this card did not exist, I believe Han as a leader would be a lot more playable. It's an excellent tempo card, and is obviously worthy of the A tier status. So I'm not going to place No Good to Me Dead in the S tier status because to me, exhausting a unit is really not the same thing as killing a unit for good. And this is a very powerful card, but I don't think it is worthy of the S tier status. I'm going to place this card over 7th Fleet Defender and under Echo Base Defender. It's a very solid piece of disruption, but it's not useful in every situation. It's very specifically a tempo card. I don't think it's a very good control card, even though control deck will use it. It's something that buys you time. It does not remove the unit completely. The unit can still use you can still use overwhelming barrage on that unit to kill everything. You can still, if the unit has Sentinel, the Sentinel will still be active. Any ability still is active. So it is a strong card, no doubt about this, but it is not as strong as it looks at first. With that being said, of course, it still is an amazing card and comes to play in A tier. Last, we have I Had No Choice. So I Had No Choice is one of these cards which basically offered the opponents the choice between two options. And among the cards that do that, this is actually not a bad one. The problem is often when you give the opponent a choice, he's always going to take the option that is worse for you, obviously, which make those cards often relatively weak. The other problem with this card is that it's very expensive. 7 resources for something that doesn't kill something indefinitely is a big deal. So what's going to happen? Your opponent is going to get back into hand a card that he really wants to play, and he's going to get rid of the card he doesn't need. The card is also significantly weaker if the opponent does not have 2 units in play. So really two non-leader units in play. Very often you're going to be in board state where there's only 1 unit in play, or at least a leader and another unit, and in which case this card doesn't have the impact that it should. And if there's only 1 non-leader unit, this unit is going to get bounced. It's not going to get returned into a library because the opponent, as you can read in the card, is an opponent choose one of those units. So if you only choose 1 non-leader unit, the opponent will choose that unit. This unit will come back into his hand. So that's pretty bad because that means that if there's only 1 unit in play, this card is just a very, very overpriced waylay. It is a trick, which means that it can be picked up by Jabba the Hutt, and there's definitely some situation where this can be having a double waylay can be very powerful. It's a little bit better than a double waylay, but it is not that much better than a double waylay, and most of the time you would just rather be playing waylay, just bounce the biggest units, and that'll be good enough. So I Had No Choice, I think, is playable but extremely situational, in situation where you would want to play that card. I could justify this card as a one-of in a deck that plays Jabba the Hutt, just as a toolbox card, as an option that you can grab from him, and a way for you to deal with certain things. So I'm going to place this at the bottom of C tier. I think if Jabba the Hutt did not exist, I would put this card in D tier, but I think Jabba the Hutt basically saved this card. I'm going to place it at the bottom of C tier. It's a one-off that you can place in your main deck or in your sideboard whenever you play Jabba the Hutt. Other than this, it's just very overpriced for what it does. And there you have it. This is basically Cunning Villainy, what I believe to be one of the strongest aspect combination in the game, mostly because of the leader. We placed 3 cards in S tier, 2 cards in A tier. That is a pretty good rate, in my opinion. And yeah, so we'll go next time for the what I believe to be the worst aspect combination in the game, which is going to be Cunning Heroism. And thank you so much for following this very long series with me, and I'll see you next time.